Hello and welcome to another episode of Obsidian Extra Lives. I'm player sports specialist Chris Stanick, joined by our special guest, Wyatt Martilik. I got that one right now. Let's just put
sure
a
did.
1-point marker for that. Wyatt's an associate area designer here with us at the studio, and he's going to hang out and play Kenshi. And we're going to talk to him about what he does here at the studio, help raise some money for the chids, and just kind of chit-chat to you and take questions as well. Wyatt, why don't you tell us about yourself a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm an area designer here at Obsidian Entertainment. I'm working on the Outer Worlds 2. I've been working here for about a year. I love my job. Not much else to say. Yeah, no.
That's cool.
Did I do that okay?
Good. Yeah, that's great.
What kind of character you pick. You'll notice I picked a Shek. So if I go to the Holy Nation, they actually don't like anything that's not human. So they'll probably throw you in prison. Yeah.
Kenny, thank you for the $10 donations. Is that a jelly bean for Wyatt?
I think that's a jelly bean for me.
All right.
Yep.
I'm basically immune to these things. All right. And Sandra donated $25 via Extra Life. Is that a random act of makeup that you want, Sandra?
Getting started right away. Okay.
Yeah. Can we get a makeup artist in here when we get a chance?
I think this is a.
Oh, that could be.
Could be buttered popcorn.
Yeah, it could be that or rotten egg.
Or rotten egg. Let's see. I think I got lucky and got the rotten egg.
Because I've heard people don't like the buttered. Oh, you want silly voices? Oh, we can do that. I'll do the silly voice. Well, no, mine's so hard to. You had a silly voice, right?
It's going to default to like Yoda unless anybody has a suggestion.
What is your favorite RPG?
Good question, that is.
I like how you're using his speech patterns too, not just his voice.
Only way to do it, it is.
I agree.
Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic.
So you always wanted to work in games.
Yeah.
Did you know what aspect you wanted to work in, or when did you first realize you wanted to design areas or like build worlds?
Yeah, it was pretty much immediately.
Really?
Like I immediately knew. Well, I think level design is what immediately hooked me and really like got me interested in game development as a whole. Because like, sure, I played video games and stuff, but I think like Gears of War was one of the first games that really stuck out to me. Like there was the branching paths where you would like take one of your guys and go in the higher path and
You go down the hole or something, yep.
And if you're playing split screen, you have like the cool interaction where you're playing like two different scenarios at the same time. And that was really fascinating to me. So yeah, like right away I knew like that was a huge component of level design and I'd be interested in making that happen. Of course, I had no idea how to be a level designer or anything or exactly what it would entail. And it's turned out being a lot more than I bargained for, but I love it, every minute of it.
And you did, you had a little bit of a different path than the folks that we've talked to so far, which I find is interesting. You chose to go into the military first.
Yeah.
Or you went to the Air Force, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I knew I wanted to be in the games industry, and I knew I wanted the best education that money could buy to make sure I had the best chance. I knew it was super competitive getting in.
It totally is.
So I didn't want to half-ass it. I wanted to make sure I did it right, and I knew what I was talking about and what I was doing to give me the best shot. The best school costs a lot of money.
It does. It definitely does.
So there were some other options available. Could have gone to a smaller school that may or may not have taught me everything I needed to know. But I stuck to my guns and I was like, no, this is what I want. And the way to do that is to join the military, have them pay for the school.
There wasn't a game design program in the military at that point? I feel like there is probably now at some.
Believe it or not, there was not. That was not an option for jobs. I did score very high on my ASVAB, so I did get to choose pretty much any job I wanted.
Okay.
But game design was not available.
And then you still went into something tech related, though.
Yeah, I did. I decided to. Well, my number one was actually because you have to do like a preference sheet. So you list like these are the 3 jobs I would want in the military. Like number one was like nuke tech or something like that.
Okay. You want to be the guy with the key or the person with the key?
I don't
Who's
think
like at the end, you know.
Yeah, They didn't really do a good job of explaining the jobs, but it sounded cool. I was like, oh, nukes, those are neat. And then I
Nukes, those are neat.
yeah, and then I learned that all those people get sent in the middle of nowhere, like
Yeah,
for
that
their
sounds
duty
just
stations.
that sounds just like the key people I'm talking about.
Yeah, but I got lucky and I didn't get my first pick. I got what's called cyber transport systems.
Okay, that sounds fancy.
Yeah, I was essentially a network engineer for the military for 4 years,
Okay.
and it was new. I didn't know that world even existed when I got into it. But they sent me off to Germany. I did that for a bit, and I don't remember most of the things I did there.
You went to Full Sail,
Yeah.
and you knew you wanted to work in game design, and now level/area design. What was that like? I guess like that program, was it specifically so designed around like game design, like every aspect of it, so you felt like you got a well-rounded take on it?
Yeah, they really had us do a lot of different things. I had like maybe 2 or 3 classes on level design proper, but we also had programming classes. We had classes for narrative design. We had statistics classes.
Hey, math matters.
Yeah. We had a bunch of different stuff that we did. Prototyping. So there was a lot of different things that we learned, and especially as I moved into my master's program, then I really started learning about, okay, what does art do? What is programming, or what do programmers do?
Mm-hmm.
And so I started learning everybody else's job once I got into my master's program.
Is the final goal to become a doctorate of development?
Sadly, Full Sail doesn't offer a doctorate program. However, I think some schools do. I don't think that's my goal. I think
It'd be pretty cool to be a doctor of video games.
it would be pretty cool, and I would insist that I go by that title.
Oh, I mean, you've earned it.
I've earned it.
I can only call my wife Dr. Stanick. I don't get to call her her first name. She didn't go to school that long for, that. It's awkward at home sometimes, but we get by. Yeah, I didn't even know that there was even a master's level of game design.
Yeah. It's I figured I might as well.
Yeah, I mean, you did your time in the military and were willing and able to go into the shit, if you will, if it came down to it.
Yeah.
And so you got, so they were like, you can go to any college you want, basically? Like,
Yeah,
they
that
cover
was
it?
pretty much,
Wow.
yeah. They covered, I think, essentially half my tuition, and then the school had a yellow ribbon program, so they paid
Okay.
the other half. So it was pretty sweet.
So I'm imagining you took to level design pretty well.
Yeah, I did, not to brag, I did pretty well
It's okay.
in school.
This is your time.
I did pretty well in school. I got valedictorian in both my bachelor's and my master's program.
Wow.
And I worked very hard for that.
I bet.
It was kind of grueling, especially because our school has such an intense program. Everything's accelerated. Everything's I did my master's in a year,
Wow.
and it's not because there's less work. It's because it's all crammed.
Compacted, yeah. It seems like he's a smart kid, Sandra. You've done a very good job. And at that point, when you were near finishing your bachelor's, where was your confidence like?
I was of like getting into the industry.
Or your skills as a game designer? Like, do you feel like you were like, I could do this? Or
I was like, no, actually, I was like, I was questioning it because my applications to positions were getting rejected.
Okay.
A lot, like so many. I don't even remember how many applications I sent out, and they just weren't going anywhere. So I was like, well, maybe it's a me issue. Maybe I need to, increase my resume or
did you
get
ever
my
ask for
skills better.
feedback after they were rejected?
Yeah.
Okay.
And those requests were not always met. So.
Of course. Well, to be fair,
No, I get it. I do. But it's hard to use an application to grow if.
Yeah, 100%. So you were getting rejected, and you felt like, all right, maybe I keep going through.
Yeah, and so it was pretty much like, well, I still have all these benefits that I can use. The school does offer a master's program, and I won't have to worry about money for a bit if I just do that.
And
so I did it.
crammed a master's in a year.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. It's pretty brutal. Not fun. Would not recommend if you have a better alternative. However, master's degrees are very expensive, so stretching out is probably not an option for most people.
And Full Sail is it online only at first?
No, no.
It is a newer college though, right? As far
It's
as
actually been around for quite a while.
Really?
Several decades.
Oh.
I think they got started in the 80s or something.
Okay.
So it was originally in person only, and then they extended those online programs because I did my stuff during COVID.
Oh, okay.
So everything was online.
Oh wow, this is all fresh.
Yeah, it's fairly fresh. Like I graduated from my master's and then instantly started here, like the next month.
So that choice, obviously, that was a good decision.
It was a good decision, and I don't know if it was necessarily the masters that did it or if it was just right time, right place.
There is a lot of that sometimes, but I'm pretty sure a master's doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I'm sure it didn't hurt.
Globe has a question, and maybe you can answer this because I don't know all the specifics. What is the difference between an associate, junior, senior, and lead?
Pretty much what the responsibilities are. So as a senior, you're probably going to be making a lot of important decisions as for the game as a whole, potentially leading regions, that kind of thing. As an associate, I'm more in the trenches. I'm doing work, really putting together the game on a more granular level. Not to say seniors don't do that. It's just they have other things that they also do, like leading associates and teaching people and leading initiatives.
So essentially, it's like a hierarchy of supervision as well as experience.
Yeah. And I'm sure I'll have more to say on that when I'm senior.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you get your doctorate of development. We'll bump your.
I'll let him know that Chris said that.
I'll run that by Marcus, no problem.
Yeah.
What was like your experience kind of applying to Obsidian? So you have this love for RPGs. You've now a master's degree, and you're like, there's this job. This is an RPG studio at its core, right? Like that's our foundation.
No, it wasn't nearly as romantic as that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it was like very much the same thing that happened as I was getting out of my bachelor's. I was spamming my application to every studio that would accept it. I applied everywhere. I applied like here, Unreal, 343, or not Unreal, Epic, like everywhere. And in fact, Obsidian wasn't even the first place to accept my application.
Oh.
The first person to accept it was PlayQ. It's a little mobile game studio, and they do a lot of like match 3 tile tap games. So they were the first ones to actually accept my application, and I was stoked. I was like, I'm in. I didn't even like. I'm not a huge fan of mobile games, but I was like, I've got a job. Like
were you at the point where the phone would ring, and no matter who or what it was, you'd be like, yes.
Pretty much.
Okay.
And that's what happened. I accepted. It wasn't a salary job. It was $16 an hour, 40 hours a week to make mobile game levels. I'd never heard of these games. I never heard of this studio, but I learned a lot. And I think shortly after accepting my application there, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, Obsidian knocks on the door, and they're like, "We like what you got, kid. Loved your design test that you did for us. We want to have more interviews with you." And I was like, oh, I just signed a contract for this mobile game studio, which I was happy with. Like I was content. I was making money. I was doing what I was in my field that I wanted to do.
You were in.
I was in.
Yep.
And then I've got Obsidian knocking on the door, and it's like, I grew up playing Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. I'm very well aware of this studio. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to talk to you guys. I'd much rather work on like Outer Worlds or something like that than a mobile game. Nothing against PlayQ. They're great. People there are great. But my heart was in RPGs, like console games and stuff. So that went well, and I think I'm one of like 3 or 4 people that got a position here.
Are there things that you learned in school, in level design, that when you come here, they're like, no, we don't do that, or?
I can't think of any specific examples where it's like, no, we don't want to direct the player that sort of way. But some of the solutions I've learned in in my previous experience, we don't do here for usually creative purposes.
Okay.
Our games are very sandbox in nature, so we want people to be able to kill anybody in Outer Worlds, for example. So designing around that a lot of times is tricky. Like a lot of my solutions might include making sure an NPC can't be damaged, so they play their cool animation before the player kills them. And sometimes we don't do things that way. Like we want to make sure we can kill anybody anytime. So sometimes like a lot of cool work isn't actually able to be seen if the player just rampages through the game and kills everybody on sight.
They do that sometimes.
So you miss out on like these lovingly crafted conversations and interactions. And that kind of hurts my soul a little bit, but that's part of the experience we're trying to give people. And I think a lot of people do love it. So,
what are 3 fundamental things that area designers, would you for area designer or level designer?
I am officially an area
designer. Okay. Area designers do to direct a player or point them in a specific way. We're gonna give away to inside baseball here.
Yeah. So three things, right?
And then I want you all to look at games when you play this later and see if you notice any of these 3 things.
Yeah. So when designing for an open world in particular, one thing you really want to make sure that you have is landmarks.
Okay.
Or sometimes called weenies, because it's just a big thing that sticks up in the world. And you could see it from miles away, and it instantly draws the player's attention.
So like the oak tree in Grounded.
Exactly. Or like if you have a big dungeon, like in Skyrim, there's that one dungeon right away that you can see in the mountains. I can't remember what its name is, but things like that, they immediately catch the player's eye, and they're like, I want to go visit that. I want to go there. And props to you as a team if you actually let the player do that. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chad knew. Thanks, Chad.
Chad always knows.
Carrie's
Yeah.
Carrie's an artist also, but a real one compared to me and Eric.
No. Not like.
Okay, so you've got your weenies, your points of interest.
Yeah, there's also breadcrumbs are another good one.
Okay.
If you want a player to go down a certain path. Placing things for them to interact with that they'll notice immediately, for example, enemies or NPCs or loot. Placing those things along the path so that the player can see them will naturally draw them that way. If they see a bunch of enemies, they'll follow them because they assume that's where they're supposed to go, in a lot of cases.
I'm very loot driven.
Yeah, so in that case, we would put like coins on the road or a treasure chest or something, and you'd instantly want to go check that out, and that would take you in the direction we want to go.
Okay.
Or that we want you to go. So what's the third thing that we can do? Kind of in this vein is using your toolbox to accomplish the same thing. So lighting can be used to draw the player's eye to specific areas.
Okay.
You can use VFX, or particle effects, or things along those
Color
lines.
as well.
Sound effects.
Like texture, anything that breaks up or creates a difference in the space.
Yeah, and so you really get into the artistic part of what we do, because a lot of this can even be shot composition. You know, how we frame a specific area in the player camera, and that's kind of hard to do. But those are a few of the things that we keep in mind when we're crafting areas to make sure we get the player to go and do what we want them to do, where we want them to go, and what we want them to do. Yeah.
Can Wyatt take us through a typical day at Obsidian and what his routine is? Does he work on the same thing every day, or does he change it based on needs?
Yeah, it's every day is a different adventure for me, and especially working on a game so early in development. It's like
You're doing great, Carrie.
there's a lot of unknowns when I come into work. You know, what's working, what isn't, what I have to work on. So it is exciting. I do have like a general list of things I need to accomplish, and that's helpful. But every day it's pretty much something new. But I come into work, you know, I sync up to the latest edition of the game, and I go in the engine and I get to work. I make areas, I fix bugs, I do maintenance.
After you make an area, about how much time do you spend playing it to get a feel for it and testing it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm usually playing it constantly, like not just when I finish the area, but as I'm making it.
Thank you, Carrie.
Do I look all right?
It looks awesome.
You're just staring at me.
Trying to go for the
Oh, good.
Oh.
Of whom I bear a striking resemblance, so I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah, so it's gosh, I'm sorry, I don't remember the question.
Okay.
Talking about Uma Thurman.
We were talking about Uma Thurman. About how much time do you spend playing your levels after you make them?
Yeah, so like throughout the whole process, easily hours, especially while I'm playing it, because that's where a lot of it comes in. Is a small change to the terrain here might mean the jump height is not enough to mantle a space or something like that. So I'm constantly jumping into the editor to play those things as I'm making them. And then once I finally do make them, I give them a couple run-throughs and ensure that they're doing what I want them to do. And then QA goes in, and then they tear it apart for bugs. And they're
really,
like, no,
really good at that.
Yeah, they're like, no, this sucks. You need to do something else. And so then I go back to the drawing board, or I tweak things. And so it's a really collaborative process and very iterative as well. So it's very rarely that my first pass on something will be perfect.
So you talked about getting feedback from QA and stuff, and because when you're a student, feedback and that stuff's all really important and stuff, but at this point, do you still, like, anybody has a point of opinion on the game or feedback, you're like, oh, cool, I'll take a look at it.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It's never a situation of like, oh, you're QA, stay in your box over there. I accept feedback from anybody, other designers, artists. We're a big team here. Like, you can't do anything by yourself here, and nor should you try. There's no reason. People's feedback is sometimes the best thing for not just refining your own areas, but potentially finding fun that you didn't know existed. So, yeah, short answer, no.
Okay. And then what is the most challenging part about what you do now compared to when you were learning this in school?
Yeah, that's a great question.
You don't have to keep saying that to build me up. I think you built me up so much already.
I say it because I don't have an answer immediately, so I'm stalling to think about it.
Oh, all right. Well, I wish I didn't say that.
Yeah, it's actually not that great of a question. Yeah, the hardest thing is probably because I'm so new to the industry, especially to Obsidian. We have a lot of tools here in-house that I didn't even know existed, even after getting on my master's program. We have a lot of cool conversation tools and a lot of additions to our editor, which make things easier. They are really nice quality of life improvements, but I didn't go to school for this. So a lot of times it's a situation of I don't know what I don't know. And we do have documentation. We got people who've been here for decades, and those are usually sources I lean on to for learning how to do my job, really. Okay. So I'm constantly learning. It's not like I learned what I needed to in school and now I'm here and I'm doing everything great. I'm constantly learning things, and it's cool.
I think it's a good way to go about it.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to learn, then you're kind of you're like dead. You're like that. You know.
Yeah, and Obsidian is really cool. They have like cool programs where you can get money to go to school and like continue your education after the fact.
Yeah.
And, I've taken advantage of that and done art classes and stuff. And
awesome.
Yeah,
the Obsidian University.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's a really cool studio to work for.
Yeah. I really like that part of it too, because I'm like, hey, if I wanted to go into this, I could start learning about it and take my shot.
Yeah, maybe it'll be great. Maybe not so much.
Maybe I'll be terrible at it, but I tried.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Wyatt, for joining me, spending some time out of your day from making areas in the Outer Worlds 2 to hang out, talk about Kenshi, the things you do here, and pretty much anything else that came up.
Yeah, thanks for wandering around with me in the wasteland.
Yeah, and you were willing to shave an eyebrow, so like, that says a lot about you.
A lot of good? Who knows?
I think people see good, and then people are like, I wouldn't shave an eyebrow just to talk to this guy. Thanks again, Wyatt, for joining us. And everybody have a great day, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. Take care. Bye-bye.